no more. Therefore I testify to you this day that I am innocent of the blood of all men, for I have not shunned to declare to you the whole counsel of God. Therefore take heed to yourselves and to all the flock, among which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers, to shepherd the church of God, which he purchased with his own blood. For this I know, that after my departure savage wolves will come in among you, not sparing the flock. Also from among yourselves men will arise, speaking perverse things, to draw away disciples after themselves. Therefore watch, and remember that for 3 years I did not cease to warn everyone night and day with tears. Okay, so we see a glimpse of some of the responsibilities of elders. And we see again those 3 words: elders, overseers, and shepherds. What are elders responsible to do? What is their work? Excuse me? Feed, okay. So some translations, instead of shepherd, will say feed in these various passages. Provide the sheep with spiritual nourishment. Make sure that they have what they need to be healthy and to grow, right? What else? Protection, right? He's talking about savage wolves are going to come in from outside. There are going to be some within the church who start speaking perverse things and want to draw the sheep away. And it's their responsibility to make sure that they're watching for this and they stop it. Right? Protection. Watching for danger. Did you move a hand? Okay. Anything else? Restore. Go find the lost sheep, right? The idea of a shepherd. A sheep wanders off, he goes out there and finds it and brings it back. Does a shepherd just let the sheep go wherever they want? Yeah, shepherd leads. Shepherd guides them, leads them to places that would be safe for them, would be healthy for them. But the important thing in this passage is he emphasizes the dangers that are coming, the savage wolves from outside, the influences from within that will rise up. And he says, take heed, watch. He goes, remember that for 3 years I didn't cease day and night to warn you about these things. This is important. All right, so let's talk a little bit about, and we could talk about other responsibilities of the elders, but I want to talk a little bit about those 3 words. Elder. Elder, the Greek word is presbyteros. It just means an older man. Why is that term used? This is like softball question. Toss it up there. Anybody? Yeah, there's the idea of experience, maturity, not a novice, not somebody new to the faith, somebody with some life experience. And we can go through I don't want to spend any time talking about the qualifications necessarily, but generally an older man, right? We're not going to take somebody, in their 20s and make them an elder. This is an older man who, by reason of age, should have more judgment, more wisdom. And there's a great history of the elders, in the Jewish community, in each town, in each place, being entrusted with responsibilities for leading. Shepherd. The Greek word is poimen, I believe. What is implied by the term shepherd? We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, the idea of feeding, of making sure they have spiritual nourishment, of guiding. Go ahead.
Shepherd provides food, water, protection.
Yeah. Shepherd watches out for predators. Shepherd makes sure that the sheep are in pastures where they can eat, that they've got safe water to drink. The interesting thing about shepherd is what do shepherds lead? A flock of sheep. How smart are sheep? Sheep a lot of times don't know what's good for them, right? They will wander off places they shouldn't go. They'll do things that they're probably not wise. And the idea also of a shepherd, if you think about David and some of the things that he wrote, they really care about their sheep, right? They know all their sheep. There's a fairly personal relationship there, and the sheep know the shepherd. Jesus says they hear his voice. Sheep can't be driven. Sheep are led. Any thoughts about shepherds?
It's used in today's religious world.
It's true. Another word for shepherd is pastor, and there is a misunderstanding in our broader religious world today that the pastor is like the chief evangelist of a congregation or something like that. And these two passages, 1 Peter 5 and Acts 20, make it pretty clear that elder, shepherd, and overseer are all synonymous terms, and they all refer to the elders, bishops, pastors of a congregation, not necessarily an evangelist. Yeah, and in the plural. Okay, what about overseer? What comes to mind when you see the word overseer? What's the work there? Do we have a word that we use that is more common in our language that is pretty much synonymous with that word? Everybody looking at me like, what are you talking about? Supervisor. What does supervisor mean if you break down the root words? Super, visor, I can see, right? Overseer. It's essentially the same word. Okay, so if we think about supervisor, what does a supervisor do? Oh, yeah, fantastic. He oversees something, right? Maybe he oversees work. He oversees some employees. He makes sure, and really this is really what it comes down to, he's the one ultimately responsible that something gets done, even though he may not be doing the work, right? And in this case, it's not necessarily the work that's being overseen, but what is being watched, what is being overseen. Souls. Let's look at Hebrews chapter 13. I I'm going to read two verses, verse 7 and then verse 17. Remember those who rule over you. This is New King James. Yours may not say rule, but we'll get there in a minute. Remember those who rule over you, who have spoken the word of God to you, whose faith follow, considering the outcome of their conduct. Then verse 17, obey those who rule over you and be submissive, for they watch out for your souls, as those who must give account. Let them do so with joy and not with grief, for that would be unprofitable to you. Okay, so in that second verse, what does he say? Why should we obey those who rule or those who lead? Yes.
They're accountable.
Yeah.
They have your best interest at heart.
Yeah, they watch out for souls, and they have to give an account for that. And so you should you should appreciate the fact that they've taken that responsibility, and you should submit yourselves to them. So, what is true of an overseer? I mean, beyond that they watch out for souls and they're responsible and they're accountable. In order to be responsible and accountable, what do they need? They need submission from the flock, but what? Why should they expect submission? Okay, they've got the proper character, and we're going to talk about that in a lot more detail in just a minute. They have authority. They have authority. An overseer has authority. And that's why I like the translation in New King James in Hebrews chapter 13. It says, those who have the rule over you. I looked at a number of different translations. Many of them say, who are your leaders or who lead? But the implication in verse 17 is you need to obey. They have authority. They have authority to command. They have authority to lead. And, you can't really have responsibility unless you have the authority. So these men that we're talking about, they are older men of wisdom and judgment. They're men who care about the flock, who know the flock, who lead gently, but they also have authority. They're responsible. They watch out for souls. Any thoughts about that? I love how just the different terms for the office, 3 different terms, help you to see what the work is all about. Go ahead, John.
The discussion is making me think that I have a flock machine,
Yes.
and I have and when I need to put these sheep away, I can't herd them in
Yeah.
the barn.
Yes.
It's like chasing chickens. It's not gonna happen. If you get a scoop of feed, they'll follow you right in, no problem. And that ram, when I'm not around, acts as a shepherd. And then recently, I've had that Cody visit the property. And he'll stand out there and eyeball him, and he'll go on. And he's willing to sacrifice himself to protect his flock. And just to witness that in the sense of, the referencing of the sheep.
Yeah.
shepherd, and the overseeing, it really rings true.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so let's talk about, the first admonition he gives here is shepherd the flock of God. That is, serve as a shepherd. Lead, feed, protect. And then serving as overseers, watch out for the welfare of the flock. But then he gives qualifiers. He says how you're to go about this. He says, not by compulsion, but willingly. not for dishonest gain, but eagerly, nor as being lords over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. What does he mean by not by compulsion? Okay. Mickey. Okay. If you find yourself saying, well, I guess somebody's got to do it, that's probably not a good motivation to become an elder. And the other thing is, it's not the position but the work that you should desire. Go ahead.
I just think as Peter's writing this letter to the many different churches, you're going to see in this, some of these have been, elders have been appointed by anything.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Previously, you've been a big like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's things that change, like you see in Acts, things are going to change. It seems to me like things are changing here.
Yes.
Maybe a period of time has passed.
Yeah.
Maybe people have a shelf life for doing something.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not as engaged as they used to be. Maybe that they're not as willing participants as they used to be at some point.
Yeah.
That position needs to be constantly reevaluated.
Yeah. That's a good point. He's not talking to somebody who's thinking about becoming an elder. He's talking to people who are elders. He says, I don't want you to continue to serve in this capacity by compulsion, right? There needs to be a willingness to continue to do this work. There needs to be the attitude, I love these people, and they need good leadership, and I'm willing to give it. I love the Lord's church, and it needs to be effective. And to be effective, it needs effective leadership, and I'm willing to do that work. It isn't, well, if I step down, there's going to be a void, and so I feel like I have to stay. You may serve in that capacity because maybe the alternative is worse. But it'd be better if you were doing it willingly. If you were saying, you know what, I want to do this. Carl, you're thinking really hard, and I think you've got a comment. Okay, all right. All right, so not by compulsion, but willingly. That there is a desire there to do this work. Not for dishonest gain. How could you serve as an elder for dishonest gain? Go ahead, Suzanne. Yeah. So what you're describing is the dishonest gain here is not necessarily monetary gain. It's simply, I want that position, I want that power, I want that recognition of prestige, right? Did you have a comment back there? Absolutely, yeah. A position of authority. The elders control the treasury, right? That could be abused, right? Go ahead, John.
An individual that's wanting maybe to impose their own feelings and thoughts about a particular area.
Yeah.
Because now's my opportunity to impose this feeling or thought that I have.
Now I can take the church where I want it to go.
Correct.
Again, not necessarily monetary gain, but looking at power, right? Because there is authority associated with this work. The eldership is not a networking or marketing opportunity for your business. The eldership is not a great item for your resume or a cushy job where you can vote yourself a big paycheck. The eldership is a work of service, of godly leadership. And generally, most congregations I've been familiar with, most circumstances I've been familiar with, elders aren't paid. Now, that's not always true, and I think there's scriptural support for paying an elder. But I think there's probably some amount of wisdom there to take away the temptation to go in a direction that is perhaps dishonest. It could lead to dishonest gain. But eagerly, right? In other words, the reason you're doing it isn't because you're looking for some sort of personal gain, but you're doing it because you want the work to be done. You care about the church. You care about the people. And you're eager to do that work. We're fortunate we've got a number of elders and former elders in the room this morning. I'm more than happy to hear from you guys. So Carl, how much dishonest gain have you gained from the eldership?
Looking at those who were called shepherds.
Yes.
Moses and David were both called shepherds.
Yes.
From leading animals to leading people.
Yes.
They must not have ulterior motives.
Absolutely. Yeah. And exactly. You can't do this job effectively if you've got selfish motives involved in why you're doing it. Yeah.
I think this is a place you have to be careful that the corporate America will very easily influence the way the church is.
Yes.
So where I work, if you are in supervision, you have to take courses in servant leadership and become a servant.
Yeah.
If you're in a position of submission, you take courses on how to be a better leader. It's completely flip-flop. That, to an extent, those are good for both pieces of the puzzle.
Yes.
But when you start dismantling all hierarchies,
Yes.
things get turned upside down. I talked to a friend this week. He said that at his congregation, the eldership struggles because he said what we have in place right now is essentially the elders are there to certify and carry out what the flock has decided to do. And that's an example, I think, that's how many places in corporate America work.
Yeah.
The organization decides this is what we demand, and then the leadership has to enact that.
Yeah. And I want to talk a lot more about that on Wednesday night because we're going to talk about, after we get done with elders, what about the flock? But that does not sound like effective leadership because you're not leading. The elder's not leading. Right? The elders are following the dictates of the congregation. All right, so not for dishonest gain. And then the last one, not being lords over those entrusted to you. What is the idea of being a lord over those entrusted to you? Don't elders have authority? Yeah.
I think an example of that would be if you have a member that is maybe questioning some things to the elders, and the elders, rather than kind of trying to understand why a person or whatever is asking those questions, they have this attitude, well, you shouldn't even be asking me that, I'm an elder. Having that type of
The idea of pulling rank, like, hey, well, I don't have to substantively answer your question. I'm just going to tell you I'm an elder, and that's the way it's got to be.
Right.
Okay.
Have I guess, not exact parallel, but Christ is in charge. Yet his role is really more of a sacrifice, and
Yeah.
And that's really the thought. So the idea of lording it over is almost precisely opposite. I think of expectation of
Yeah. And go ahead, Mickey. Yeah, domineering. Yeah. And Jesus made a comment about this in Matthew 20, I think, that really illustrates what we're talking about. Starting chapter 20, verse 25. But Jesus called them to himself and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise great authority, and those who are great exercise authority over them. Yet it shall not be so among you, but whoever desires to become your servant, whoever desires to become great, let him be your servant, and whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to serve, or to be served, but to serve and give his life a ransom for many," which gets back to what Jimmy was saying. Other translations in verse 25, the idea of those who are great exercise authority over them, I've seen the word benefactor there, that he's exercising his authority for his own benefit, right? He's looking to say, well, I'm in charge now, and we're going to tailor things kind of around me, right? Did you have a comment? No, go ahead.
There's two qualifications, if you will, two necessary things out of the three. And I have made this mistake before in running business, and you take your best people and promote them.
Yeah.
And your best group of people aren't necessarily those that are really good at what they do.
Yeah.
You move them into another position. You take that to your best deacons. You don't necessarily move them into elders. They might be very good at doing a certain job for deacon and be very difficult in their mind to turn loose of that job once they become an elder. And they may want to run point on that and keep doing that, keep doing that, keep doing that. And it gets into being lord over when you're tied into something, it potentially can be.
Yeah.
And also the compulsion part, but willingly. It's like, that's what I'm supposed to do next. That's what I've been preparing for. Maybe so, maybe not. There's a whole other list of qualifications that go along with that. Maybe you're just a really, really good deacon, and that's what you should always be. So, just everybody doesn't fit.
Okay.
It's always a natural progression to go to some place.
Yeah. Having authority doesn't mean that you tell everyone what to do all the time. It just means that you have the authority. And you need to use it wisely. In contrast to lording it over them, he says, but being examples to the flock. Right? And I think some have mistakenly taken that verse and said, oh, the only way elders lead is by example, which I don't believe is true at all. But it is in a very, very important way that they lead. It's not my way or the highway. It's not, pulling rank and saying, I don't have to answer your questions, I'm an elder. It's not just simply making dictates because that's what you want to do instead of considering input from the congregation. But the rule, the authority that elders have is for the benefit of the congregation. It is for the benefit of the Lord's church, not for the benefit of the elder. So, what do we mean being examples to the flock? How do you lead by example?
Jesus got on his knees and washed feet.
He did. He did. And that probably spoke volumes more than telling his disciples, he who wants to be greatest among you, let him be your servant. They probably heard that and thought, oh, that's an interesting saying. And then Jesus got on his knees and washed their feet, and they couldn't believe it. Like, what are you doing? In fact, Peter even said, what are you doing? The example was amazing, the power of that. Yeah.
It's really shocking that Peter is an elder. Okay?
Yes.
And so he's humble,
Yes.
and he has allowed the Lord to transform him. People can see that, and they point to him.
Yeah. How effective are elders going to be if they're not good examples?
I was thinking it's been years since we've done this, but when we had meetings,
Yeah.
during winter meetings, we'd often have work days out here.
Yeah.
And any elder that's ever served here has worked as hard as anyone else to the physical ability during those work days.
Yeah.
And that's leading by example, and you just get in there and get it done when everybody else is done.
Absolutely. Your influence is going to be very limited if you're not a good example, right? If the elders are asking the congregation to be hospitable, well, the elders need to be models of hospitality, right? If the elders are asking us to be diligent in greeting visitors to our congregation during our worship service, the elders need to be good examples of doing that, right? Seeking the lost, being generous, encouraging the faint-hearted, loving the brethren, avoiding gossip and slander, being chaste and discreet in dress and conduct, devoted to prayer, devoted to Bible study. All of those things, the elders should be encouraging the congregation, you need to do this. And they need to be good examples of all of those things. I don't think, I mean, obviously, elders are not perfect. No, you know, they're not perfect, but they need to be models. And a congregation is unlikely to rise above its leadership. Any thoughts on that? Yeah, go ahead.
I think, just bringing up the foot washing, that's quite a personal touch.
Yeah.
That Jesus gave. And I feel like sometimes, this is a personal opinion, that the elders feel distant enough to where that personal touch might not be there. There's a personal touch with doing things here, but outside of these walls might not exist as someone spiritually minded.
I'm going to say, yeah, go ahead.
Having the flock in your home, having the flock over for meals, coming by to see how you're doing. I'm not saying that that doesn't happen. I'm not saying that that doesn't happen here. I'm saying in general terms, when I've thought of an elder, that's generally what I've looked for, is someone who cares about the things that God cares about. When you look at the Psalms, it talks about God caring for the widows, caring for the fatherless, caring for those who aren't strong, especially when they're looking at spiritual matters, people who need food spiritually. And the only time that we see the spiritual taken care of is within a church assembly. I think that might be. I'm not saying that's what's happening.
No, I totally agree with you. I agree that what the elders' work, and I know this is true, extends well beyond the walls of this building, right? They are watching for souls. They are involved in people's lives. Unfortunately, a lot of times they're dealing with people who have more problems, more problematic situations, and the trouble with a congregation this size is how many elders we have? 6? Yeah, but it's difficult to visit everybody, right, on a regular basis. And so the elders do spend a lot of time with people who are struggling with something.
Please don't
Yeah.
That's not what's happening. I'm just saying, as a member of a flock,
Yeah.
that's what I think of when I think of
Sure.
elders standing here.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's not happening.
You know, and
That's what they
yeah, and I said,
is looking.
yeah, and I said I agree, absolutely. One thing I've learned in the business world is that you get what you model. As a leader of in an organization, you get what you model, right? How you behave, the people underneath you tend to behave that way, and it's important to have good leadership because a congregation is unlikely to rise above its leaders. All right, we are almost out of time. One thing I do want to mention is this last line. When the chief shepherd appears, you will receive a crown of glory that does not fade away. The elders have great responsibility. They watch for souls. They will give account. But there is a great reward waiting for them when the Lord says, well done, good and faithful servant. All right, so that's where we're going to stop this morning. We will hit the flip side of that, which is what's the congregation's responsibility on Wednesday night. Thank you, everybody.